It was just another Monday morning at Stratwell Industries, a towering corporate hub in downtown Chicago. The lobby buzzed with its usual rhythm, heels clicking on tile, coffee cups in hand, briefcases swinging in sync with busy schedules. Executives barely noticed the janitorial staff gliding through, pushing carts and wiping down glass, an invisible orchestra keeping the building pristine. Benjamin Ross, the company's CEO, was halfway to the elevator when something made him stop. A voice. Not just any voice. This one was precise, fluid, and unmistakably fluent in Mandarin Chinese. He scanned the space and saw her, a black woman in a navy blue janitor uniform, standing next to the digital directory, speaking confidently to a lost visitor. Her tone was clear, helpful, and calm. Before he could fully register what he was hearing, she turned and addressed a delivery driver in flawless Spanish, then switched seamlessly to French for a confused vendor trying to navigate mislabeled boxes. Benjamin blinked. There she was, someone he'd passed by dozens of times. A woman whose name he didn't know. A face that had become part of the backdrop. She had never been in a meeting. Never asked for anything. And yet here she was, speaking 3 world languages before 9 a.m. He stepped closer. "Excuse me," he said. She turned to him, composed. "Yes, sir. That was Mandarin, wasn't it?" "Yes, sir." "And Spanish, French." She nodded. "Also German, Arabic, Portuguese, Italian, Swahili. And I read Latin, but I don't usually count that." He paused. "You speak 9 languages?" "Yes, sir," she replied, without an ounce of ego. "What's your name?" "Elena Brooks." "Ms. Brooks, do you have a moment?" There was hesitation in her eyes. Not fear, just a weariness shaped by years of being overlooked in a building that only seemed to see the surface. She nodded slowly. "All right." As the elevator doors closed behind them, the silence between them felt charged. Elena finally spoke. "I've worked here for 12 years. Never thought I'd be invited up." Benjamin gave a quiet smile. "Sometimes, all it takes is being seen. And you just changed how I see everything." They rode up to the executive floor. But neither of them knew, yet, how this encounter would change both their lives. Elena sat carefully across from Benjamin Ross in his corner office, the skyline stretching behind him like a painting. The space smelled faintly of leather and lemon polish, success in scent form. She didn't fidget. She simply folded her hands in her lap and waited. Benjamin leaned forward, still processing what he'd witnessed in the lobby. "I have to ask," he said gently, "how does someone with your skills end up here?" There was no offense in her eyes, only quiet truth, and the kind of patience worn into someone who's been asked that question in different ways her whole life. "Do you want the real answer?" she asked. "I wouldn't have brought you up here if I didn't." She nodded slowly. "All right." Elena took a breath, like she was unwrapping something carefully stored away. "I grew up in Akron, Ohio. Only child. My mom was a nurse's aide, my dad worked in a tire plant. We didn't have much, but education was sacred. Books were everywhere. I got a scholarship to Ohio State, majored in linguistics, was halfway through my master's when my mom got sick. Real sick." She looked out the window, not to escape, but to focus. Her tone stayed calm, measured. "I dropped everything and came home to care for her. Then Dad passed 6 months later, stroke. After that, everything unraveled. I had a baby, no partner, no savings. I took whatever jobs I could find, cashier, cleaner, nighttime security. Eventually, I found this janitor job. It gave me hours that let me be there for my daughter." Benjamin listened without interruption. It wasn't just her story that struck him, it was the way she told it. With dignity, not bitterness. With clarity, not apology. And the languages? He asked. I never stopped learning, she said with a small smile. I borrowed books from the library, listened to BBC radio, podcasts, read newspapers in different languages just to keep sharp. I couldn't afford tuition, but I could afford commitment. There was something deeper in her voice, an edge of earned steel. She didn't say it outright, but it hung in the air. When you're a black woman trying to raise a child alone, being extraordinary just means surviving with grace. A long silence followed. Benjamin sat back in his chair, suddenly aware of how many resumes he'd skimmed, how many interviews he'd conducted, and how rarely he'd looked beneath the surface. How many people like Elena he'd passed in elevators without ever seeing. You ever dream about doing something else? He asked. She shrugged. Sometimes. But dreams get quiet when rents due. Benjamin opened a notebook and jotted something down. What are you writing? She asked, her voice calm but curious. An idea, he said, already thinking beyond titles, beyond tradition. That night, after an entire day of budget meetings and vendor calls, he still couldn't shake the image of Elena in that lobby, moving between cultures and languages like she was born to it. The next afternoon, he returned to find her again. Not to ask more questions, but to offer a challenge. The next day, Elena was restocking microfiber cloths in the supply room when Benjamin Ross appeared in the doorway, again. You came back? She asked, surprised. I couldn't stop thinking about our conversation, he said. I need a favor. Elena wiped her hands on her shirt. What kind of favor? We've got a delegation from Sao Paulo upstairs. Our translator canceled last minute. Could you help? Portuguese? She asked. He nodded. She didn't hesitate this time. Yes. I can do that. Minutes later, she stepped into the conference room like she belonged there, not in uniform, but with a presence that shifted the atmosphere. Heads turned. A few brows lifted. But once she started speaking, confident, warm, and precise in her Portuguese, the room exhaled. The tension dissolved as she moved through introductions, jokes, and technical terms with fluid ease. Laughter broke out at one point when she responded playfully to a joke from one of the Brazilian executives. No one needed a translation for what had just happened. Benjamin didn't speak the language, but he saw it clearly. Connection. Not just words, but trust. Ease. Cultural fluency. When the meeting ended, one of the executives turned to him and asked, She's better than anyone we've worked with this year. Where did you find her? Benjamin just smiled. Right here. Back in the hallway, he caught up with her. You ever done professional translation before? He asked. She shook her head. No certificate. No time for school. My daughter came first. And where is she now? 26. ICU nurse in Tempe. Paid her own way through school. Stubborn, like her mama. They laughed. Two people from different worlds, unexpectedly aligned. But in Elena's eyes, there was still caution. The world didn't always reward women like her for excellence. Not without suspicion. Not without strings. She wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop, she just knew better than to assume there wasn't one. That night, Benjamin sat in his car for a long time before starting the engine. He thought about all the consultants, all the DEI briefings, all the spreadsheets and metrics, and how easy it had been to overlook brilliance that didn't come dressed in the right credentials. The next morning, Elena's shift had barely started when her supervisor approached her with an odd look. Ben, Mr. Ross wants to see you again. Did I do something wrong? No idea, he said. But he didn't sound mad. As she walked through the building, people glanced up from their desks. Some nodded politely. Others whispered. Something was shifting. And when she reached the executive floor, it wasn't just a meeting, it was an offer. Benjamin stood by the window when Elena arrived, coffee in one hand, deep in thought. Without turning, he said, "Come in." She stepped inside, standing quietly until he faced her. "I've been thinking a lot about something," he began. "Talent waste. How many people never get a shot, not because they're not capable, but because no one ever looks twice?" Elena said nothing. She'd heard nice words before. Words didn't pay rent, and they sure didn't erase the years of being overlooked while working twice as hard. "I want to create a new role," he continued. "Something that didn't exist before, but should have." She tilted her head. "What kind of role?" "Cultural liaison for global partnerships," he said. "We need someone who can bridge the gaps, language, culture, communication. Someone who sees nuance before it becomes a problem." She blinked. "Me? You're more qualified than most people in this building. Honestly, it's not even close." Her voice was cautious. "This real as it gets. I don't have a corporate resume. I don't own a blazer. We'll get you what you need. We'll figure it out. I'm not hiring a wardrobe, I'm hiring you." She stared at him, weighing the offer with the same precision she used to scrub every floor in this building. "You know people are going to talk. Let them," he said. "Progress makes noise." She exhaled, steady. "All right then. Let's see what I can do." They shook hands. Not just an agreement, an inflection point. By Wednesday, the news had spread like wildfire. Elena Brooks, the quiet black janitor from night shift, had been promoted to an executive-level role. Whispers filled the building like smoke. Some called her a prodigy, others thought it was a PR stunt. Maybe she was an undercover consultant, a government plant, a genius hiding in plain sight. But not everyone was clapping. Not everyone at Stratwell Industries welcomed the news. By Thursday, the side conversations had shifted from shock to suspicion. In the break room, two marketing analysts whispered over kale salads. "I've got an MBA and I've been here 4 years. She was cleaning bathrooms last week." "Maybe she's a genius," the other shrugged. "Or maybe Ross is just trying to make a statement." In the boardroom, the whispers turned into mutterings of optics, diversity hires, and exceptions. Elena felt at the moment she stepped into her new office, a modest space on the 12th floor, furnished with only a desk, a computer, and a potted plant. But to her, it might as well have been Mars. She didn't complain. She asked HR if she could keep her old uniform, not to wear, just to remind herself where she started. A quiet reminder that progress was real, but never promised. Later that day, her first real challenge walked in. Douglas Vance, head of international operations. Clipboard in hand, eyes sharp, handshake absent. "So, you're the new liaison," he said, like the title itself was a joke. "That's what I'm told. Experience in global strategy?" She smiled calmly. "Only from the outside looking in." He dropped a stack of folders on her desk. "Here's Italy, Dubai, and Sao Paulo. Let's see what you can handle." She stayed late, reviewing contracts in 3 languages. She corrected a translation error in a shipping clause that had cost the company over $70,000 in tariffs. The next morning, Benjamin stopped by her office. "How's day 1? I've had worse." He smirked. "Vance gave you a hard time?" "He doesn't scare me." She paused, then asked, "Why me, Ben? You could have given me a bonus and kept walking. Why this? He leaned on the doorframe. Because I used to be overlooked too. Not in the same way, but enough to remember what it feels like. And because I'm tired of seeing talent buried under uniforms and assumptions. I've never had a title, she said. You've had something more valuable, proven strength. She nodded. Okay. But I won't pretend to be what I'm not. Good. That's why you're here. Later that week, Elena gave her first internal presentation. Fluent German, flawless context, no slides, just clarity. She didn't try to impress. She translated business into human. And for the first time, some in the room realized they'd been underestimating her because they'd never bothered to understand her. No one could deny her now. But the resistance hadn't disappeared. And upstairs, someone had started asking questions, not out of curiosity, but with intent to push back. Not everyone at Stratwell Industries welcomed the news. By Thursday, the side conversations had shifted from shock to suspicion. In the break room, two marketing analysts whispered over kale salads. I've got an MBA and I've been here 4 years. She was cleaning bathrooms last week. Maybe she's a genius, the other shrugged. Or maybe Ross is just trying to make a statement. In the boardroom, the whispers sharpened into coded language, optics, diversity hires, exceptions. Words that didn't need to say race aloud to mean it. Elena felt at the moment she stepped into her new office, a modest space on the 12th floor, furnished with only a desk, a computer, and a potted plant. But to her, it might as well have been Mars. She didn't complain. She asked HR if she could keep her old uniform, not to wear, just to remind herself where she started. Where many people assumed she still belonged. Later that day, her first real challenge walked in. Douglas Vance, head of international operations. Clipboard in hand, eyes sharp, handshake absent. So, you're the new liaison, he said, like the title itself was an insult. That's what I'm told. Experience in global strategy? She smiled, calm and unshaken. Only from the outside looking in. He dropped a stack of folders on her desk. Here's Italy, Dubai, and Sao Paulo. Let's see what you can handle. She stayed late, reviewing contracts in 3 languages. She corrected a translation error in a shipping clause that had cost the company over $70,000 in tariffs. She flagged inconsistencies, asked the right questions, rewrote what needed rewriting. When she left, the building was dark. The next morning, Benjamin stopped by her office. How's day 1? I've had worse. He smirked. Vance gave you a hard time? He doesn't scare me. She paused, then asked quietly. Why me, Ben? You could have given me a bonus and kept walking. Why this? He leaned on the doorframe. Because I used to be overlooked too. Not in the same way, but enough to remember what it feels like. And because I'm tired of seeing talent buried under uniforms and assumptions. I've never had a title, she said. You've had something more valuable, proven strength in plain sight. She nodded. Okay. But I won't pretend to be what I'm not. Good. That's why you're here. Later that week, Elena gave her first internal presentation. Fluent German, flawless context, no slides, just clarity. She didn't posture, she didn't perform. She delivered. And for a few in the room, it was the first time they saw a black woman lead a meeting not in HR, not in DEI, but in international strategy. No one could deny her now. But that didn't mean the resistance disappeared. And upstairs, someone had started asking questions, not out of curiosity, but with intent to push back. The pushback had a name. Eleanor Ward, a senior board member from the Dallas office, flew in for a routine check-in that everyone knew wasn't routine. She'd been with Stratwell since the 1990s, a walking archive of board politics, sharp suits, and sharper judgments. Elena was called to meet her in a glass-walled conference room on the 17th floor. Eleanor barely looked up. "Have a seat," she said. Elena sat. "I've reviewed your file," Eleanor began. "No degree. No formal certifications. No corporate training." "That's correct," Elena replied, calm and composed. "You were in janitorial services 3 weeks ago." "I was." Eleanor leaned back. "Explain to me how someone with your background is now handling high-level international affairs." Elena didn't flinch. "Because I speak the languages. Because I've resolved more in 2 weeks than others have in 2 quarters. I'm not here because of charity. I'm here because I deliver results." Eleanor's pen paused mid-sentence. "You think this company should be run on instinct and charm?" "No," Elena said. "It should be run on understanding, precision, and the ability to see what others miss, especially when those others don't look like you." That was the moment Eleanor blinked. Just once. And Elena knew she had struck something real. "I don't need to be liked," she added. "But I do need to be useful. And I am." The meeting ended in tense silence. No congratulations. No handshake. Just a quiet wariness in Eleanor's eyes. Elena didn't go back to her office right away. She stepped outside, sat on a bench across the street, and looked up at the building she now worked in. The same building she once entered through a side service door. She called her daughter. "Hey, Ma. Everything okay?" "Yeah," Elena said. "Just wanted to hear your voice." They talked about groceries. About her daughter's stubborn dog. About nothing, really. But it was enough. The next morning, Elena arrived early. Held her meeting. Took a call from Berlin without notes. And on her whiteboard, in careful handwriting, someone had left a message. "We see you." And it spread. Interns came to her for guidance. New hires asked how she'd learned so much. She never held court. She never made it about herself. "How'd you learn all those languages?" one intern asked, eyes wide. "1 word at a time," she smiled. "Same way you will." When Benjamin stopped by the break room that afternoon, he said, "You're making waves." Elena sipped her tea. "That a good thing? In this place? It means you're exactly where you need to be." He paused. "I want to start something. A program. To find more people like you. People who've been overlooked." She didn't even blink. "I've already started building it in my head." And just like that, Voice Inside was born, a pilot program for hidden talent. Training. Mentorship. Language scholarships. Visibility. A month later, Elena spoke at a national logistics summit. No notes. No script. Just truth. "I was never just a janitor," she said. "I was fluent. I was capable. I was ready. You just never looked close enough." Silence. Then thunderous applause. On her way out, a young man approached her with tearful eyes. "My mom's a hotel cleaner," he said. "She speaks 5 languages. I used to be ashamed to say that." Elena smiled, hand on his shoulder. "Don't ever be ashamed of where you come from. The only thing to be ashamed of is not seeing brilliance when it's right in front of you." Elena returned from the summit lighter than she'd left. Not because of praise or applause, but because, for the first time in a long time, she felt like she didn't have to prove she belonged. She simply did. The next morning, she found something on her desk. A sealed envelope. No name, no logo. Just her name, handwritten in block letters. Inside, a note. I used to think I'd be invisible forever. But today, I stood a little taller because of you. Thank you. No signature. No clue who had sent it. Just truth. That afternoon, a new plaque was installed outside the company's primary training center. The same room where onboarding happened, where mid-level teams gathered for development workshops. The old nameplate came down. The new one read, "The Brooks Room." Named in honor of someone who reminded us that potential isn't always where you expect it. There was no ribbon cutting. No party. Just meaning. Benjamin stood outside the room as a group of interns walked in. One leaned toward another and whispered, "Who's Brooks?" A senior associate answered, "She's the reason we look twice now." Back upstairs, Elena sat in her office, now filled with books, plants, and the gentle hum of potential. In the drawer beside her, she kept the one thing no one else could see, her old janitor's badge. Not out of sentimentality. Out of clarity. Because that badge was never a symbol of who she was beneath. It was proof of what she endured to get here. And she knew something else, too. This story wasn't just hers anymore. Each email she received from a warehouse worker asking about training. Each coffee chat with someone from security or admin whispering, "Can you help me learn French?" Each quiet knock on her door by someone who thought their brilliance didn't count. That was the legacy. And as Elena looked out the window at a city full of noise, she whispered to herself, "If they open a door for you, leave it open. And bring chairs." Talent has no uniform. Fluency doesn't require a title. And brilliance. Sometimes, it comes wearing a twist out and carrying a mop, not a resume. See people. Not roles. Months passed. The building that once saw Elena Brooks as part of the background now felt different. Not louder. Not flashier. Just awake. The voice inside program had expanded. A former mailroom clerk was now in data analytics. A cafeteria worker had just passed their first certification in French. And HR had implemented a new policy. Internal interviews before external hires. No more overlooking the people who already knew the building like the back of their hand. Every few weeks, Elena hosted something informal. Language lunches in the break room. People from every floor came. No agenda. Just curiosity. 1 hour, one language, one conversation at a time. One afternoon, she found herself standing by the janitorial wing again. She stopped outside the supply closet where she once folded cloths and organized bleach bottles. A new hire, young, quiet, and unsure, stood nearby, holding a broom like a shield. "First week?" she asked him. He nodded. "Do you speak any other languages?" she asked casually. "Just Haitian Creole," he replied, hesitating like it was a flaw. She smiled. "That's not just anything. That's power. Don't hide it." He looked at her, surprised. "Who are you?" She extended her hand. "I'm Elena. I used to be where you are." She didn't say more. She didn't need to. The change was already happening. Not just in the boardrooms, but in the basements, the elevators, and the spaces no one ever decorated. Because when someone sees you, truly sees you, it makes you want to see others, too. Not everyone will get a title. But everyone deserves a chance to be seen. Look twice. Not just at resumes or titles, but at the people right in front of you. Because brilliance doesn't always come with a business card. Because fluency isn't limited to boardrooms. Because some of the sharpest minds in your building know exactly where every hallway leads, because they've cleaned them. See people, not positions. Open doors. And when you do, bring chairs. There's talent all around you. Let it rise.